Proverbs 5 verse 5 to 6 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all our ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. This verse encourages believers to trust God completely and not rely solely on their own understanding, promising that God will guide them. Surrendering all to Jesus should be the central theme in our lives as believers and followers of God. Let us give over our desires to the King of Kings. Let him lead us into all truth. To surrender to God does not mean that you stop everything that you are doing and wait for things to happen by themselves. It does not mean that you give up on trying and feel demotivated. It's completely natural and healthy to have goals, desires, and plans. That means that you are motivated and have a vision for your life. This act of surrender is often seen as a way to deepen one's faith and trust in God, allowing him to lead and guide in all aspects of life. Surrendering to Jesus involves trusting him completely and having faith that his plans are for your ultimate good, even when you don't understand them. It requires letting go of control and allowing Jesus to take the lead in your life. This can involve releasing worries, fears, and personal ambitions. Surrender often includes a willingness to obey Jesus' teachings and commandments, living according to his principles. Matthew 16 verse 24 to 25 says, "Then Jesus said to his disciple, 'Whoever wants to be his disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whosoever loses their life for me will find it.'" Spending time in prayer and reflection can help strengthen your relationship with Jesus and make the act of surrender more genuine. Many believers find that surrendering leads to personal transformation and spiritual growth as they align their lives more closely with Jesus' teachings. Submitting to God's will leads to the life that we all long for. According to the promise of John 10 verse 10, it leads to a life of peace and fulfillment with an inner sense of meaning and purpose. In the Bible, we see many examples of surrender. For instance, Esther surrendered her life to intercede for her people, saying with great courage, "If I perish, I perish." The prophet Isaiah went naked and barefoot for 3 years at God's command. That was some serious surrender. In the New Testament, we see the Apostle Paul being poured out as a drink offering and being willing to live instead of dying and being with Jesus for the sake of the Philippians. When Jesus walked on this earth, he was the epitome of surrender. Jesus actively chose God's will over his own. He learned obedience to God through the things he suffered. He delighted to do God's will. Above all, in the Garden of Gethsemane, facing a cruel, painful, and humiliating death, Jesus' prayer of surrender was, "Not my will, but yours be done." Jesus redeemed us. He is our best example of surrendering to God's will. I challenge you to choose to surrender today to what he is asking you to do. It may be difficult, but you won't regret surrendering to God's will. Letting go of the need to control is one of the hardest things to do, as we do not like feeling vulnerable. We are under the impression that if we control things, we avoid suffering and everything goes our way. But in reality, we cannot control what is outside of us, and thus we create more suffering. We can only control how we react to things, how we think, and how we feel. By strengthening our faith in God, we will find it easier to let go and trust completely in our Creator. When we surrender to God and let go, we feel relieved and a sense of freedom. Even though it sounds scary, it's extremely liberating as it frees our mind from negative thinking, doubts, and speculative fear. Romans 12 verse 2. "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." God is saying to you today, follow him one step at a time. That is all he requires of you. In fact, that is the only way to move through this space-time world. You see huge mountains looming, and you start wondering how you are going to scale those heights. Meanwhile, because you are not looking where you're going, you stumble on the easy path where he is leading you now. As he helps you get back on your feet, you tell him how worried you are about cliffs up ahead. But you don't know what will happen today, much less tomorrow. Our path may take an abrupt turn, leading you away from those mountains than is visible from a distance. If he does leads us to the cliffs, he will equip us for the strenuous climb. He will even give his angels charge over you to preserve you in all your ways. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding.